morning. Welcome to us all on this long weekend Sunday in the midst of June, at the end of June, last day. And we'll be grateful together to be together in this circle. And we welcome one another to SSUC, to Southminster Steinhauer United Church, to this circle that we all gather in and can feel welcome, can feel affirmed, can feel that we belong. Whether you're here in this room with us or you join us online, welcome just as you are, and we are glad to be together. When we gather here, we recognize that we are all in different places. We are all in places somewhere between having it together and being one big mess. We are all in different places in terms of knowing what we think and believe and not having a clue. We are all in different places in terms of carrying out the work of our spiritual living and taking our first steps. However and wherever we find ourselves, know that we are in a good place to be together and to journey with one another, to question, to express our gratitude or our grief, to express our joy and our frustration with the act of human living, to be together in our hopes and our fears. This is a place where we can do that all in community. So as we meet, we acknowledge that we are here for one another and that no great wisdom will come from this table today. The wisdom will come because we all share with each other. Some are laughing harder than others, and I'm taking note of your names. Yeah. As we gather together in community, we recognize the long history, not just of this community, which is but a blip in the history of what has happened in this land, on this land, in this area, and in the lives of people that have called this place home. We meet respectfully acknowledging that we do so in Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, for the Métis Nation, and we hope to honor that tradition and that long, long history by making our gathering place and every gathering one of respect, of hope, of peace, reconciliation, and partnership, and we do that together with each other. We may have a few items to share of things that are coming up in the life of our community, and I invite, if you've got anything to share, please be ready to do that. I'll just You don't have to be around here very long to realize that it takes a lot of people to do so many things that we have going on in this community, not just now in this month, but through all the months of the year. And we're grateful for all the time and the energy and the support that comes from this community in making this community so active, in us having such a wonderful array of not only programs, but in supports and ways that we support other communities, organizations, and projects in the city and around the world. So thank you for all of the ways that you contribute. If you'd like to donate to the life of this church community this morning, you can do so in one of the boxes you find at the back doors. You can donate online anytime at our website, and if you buy groceries, you can buy grocery cards from us that will help us receive a portion of those proceeds back. We've done the hardest work of all of the morning. We've got ourselves here. So now let's do something else as a part of our journey. Let's focus ourselves on being here, on focusing our attention and our hearts and our minds on each other, on this open space, on this time that we have together to reflect on our living. Let's work on being here fully as we sing our way into this circle. This candle lit every time we gather reminds us that though it's a single flame, it's connected in chemistry, in composition to every other flame. And the same might be true of us. We are each unique and yet connected. Part of one circle, one earth, one community, one world. And so may this light, as we gather, remind us that there's not just one way to be light, but many. May it remind us that we are all unique expressions of one light. And we affirm that within this community, that it is not what our beliefs and our ideologies are that define us. For those will often divide. It is our belonging to the whole. So let this light, as it shines among us this morning, remind us of our connection to each other and the world. May we recognize our importance to light the corner of our lives in which we live, to let our light shine for ourselves and for others, and to experience aliveness, life, in whatever way we can, that may help us to work and live with justice, with peace, with kindness, compassion, with all the things that we wish to see in our world. As this light shines, may we join our words to the light, that we might gather and unite our intentions with one another as we say these words together. In the beauty of this world, in the mystery of being, in the connection of spirit in which we live, we come as we are. We are brave and afraid, grieving and celebrating, anxious and trusting, grateful and resentful, whole and broken, open and guarded. We gather to strengthen our intention to move from apathy to engagement, so that we might bring healing to hurt, peace to violence, beauty to ugliness, justice where there is inequity, and compassion where there is cruelty. May we pray with our whole being, moving our feet to act where our hearts have been opened. Amen. for All Ages story from the front this morning, and invite you to enjoy it wherever you're sitting. It's called Weezer Changes the World. It's written by David MacPhail and illustrated by him as well. Coming to the carpet. Easier to see that way. As a puppy, Weezer was perfectly normal. He did all the usual things that puppies do. He chewed Billy's toys. He barked at the clock. And every once in a while, not on purpose, of course, he tinkled on the rug. Then one day, something striking happened that changed him. Weezer began to develop new interests and skills. He could count to 10 and higher. He helped Billy with his homework. And he explained the law of gravity to Billy's class during show and tell. But Weezer wasn't just good with numbers. No, he had good taste too, especially about which drapes went best with the new furniture. And as he got older, Weezer took on more demanding tasks. He predicted weather patterns and helped avert natural disasters. He figured out how to encourage the rich to give to the poor. The benefit concerts were a sensation. Weezer worked alongside scientists and doctors to help find cures for diseases. He came up with formulas for clean water and clean air, and he sat down with world leaders to show them the way to peace on earth. Then one day, something striking happened that changed Weezer again. When Weezer didn't come home, Billy went looking for him. Finally, he found Weezer lying still beside the road. Billy carried Weezer home, laid him on his bed. A team of doctors was called in. As news of Weezer's condition spread, people from all over the world sent cards and letters urging him to get well. They vowed to carry on Weezer's good works. They would feed the hungry and care for the sick. They would keep the air and water clean. And mostly, they promised to stop fighting. And then just like that, Weezer opened his eyes. He was going to be all right. Bells rang, sirens wailed, and a cheer arose across the land. Hooray for Weezer! Over the next few weeks, Weezer got his strength back. But there was something different about him. He no longer seemed interested in math or science or interior decorating. He paid no attention to the weather or the TV news. Now his top priorities were chasing a ball or fetching a newspaper or playing outside with his best friend Billy. His days of changing the world were over. Weezer had become a plain old dog again. An ordinary, fun-loving, much-loved dog. But the people of the world, because of Weezer, they were changed forever. That's today's story. I just want to say one thing about it. We imagine often of doing amazing things in life. They might not be the amazing things that Weezer did, like curing diseases or finding ways to clean the air and the water, although if they are, that's fantastic. But we might, Weezer teaches us, make a difference in all of the things that we do, no matter what they are. If someone drops something and we pick it up for them, if someone needs a smile and we give it to them, if someone needs anything and we're able to attend to that need in whatever way we can, imagine if someone sees us acting like that. They may just say, I want to be like them. In those small ways, we change the world. in our small actions. And whatever it is, we can't underestimate how that might change another person's life. So thank you, Weezer, for that lesson. Let's sing. This is a poem by Alice Major called The Helium Thoughts. Our starry brains, their frail shells stuffed with as many neurons as the galaxy has suns. On this sunlit afternoon, I clutch my temples to keep the giant number in. More synaptic links than there are seconds in 30 million years. The combinatorics make me spin. We could think anything. And yet the helium thoughts of youth consume me. The paths of thought are bound in myelin, spiral arms that wrap us tightly in the past, our own and the bonds of evolution. Thoughts lock spin in preset combinations and conclusions. It's hard to get past helium when we are still so young. These are the words of a local poet. May we find wisdom for our living.
From the book of James in the Christian scripture. What good is it if you learn all the right words but never do anything? Does merely talking about your spirituality indicate that it really even matters? For instance, you come upon an old friend dressed in rags and half-starved and say, "Good morning, friend. Be clothed in all that's holy, be filled with the Spirit, and walk off without providing so much as a coat or a cup of soup. Where does that get you? Isn't it obvious that faith talk without action is outrageous nonsense? I can already hear one of you agreeing by saying, sounds good. You take care of the faith department, and I'll handle the action department. Not so fast. You can no more show me your action apart from your fancy words than I can show you my faithful words apart from my busy action. Talk and action, they fit together like a hand in a glove. This is a spiritual teaching passed down from the Jesus tradition.
Well, I remember well an experience I had many years ago now in a unit of clinical pastoral education, and I want to tell you what clinical pastoral education is, CPE. This is where theological students and others spend anywhere from 3 months to a year in a clinical setting doing chaplaincy work. Work that is typically way outside of the realm of the usual experience in the church or in a theological setting. And so in my case, I decided, well, why not choose the busiest trauma hospital in Pennsylvania as my site to do CPE? So off I go to the Lehigh Valley Hospital, just outside of Allentown. And on one particular day, in that ER, they have the CPE students and the chaplains attending to every emergency in ER, every major trauma in ER, and attending to not only the patient, but also the patient's family. At the end of one of those long shifts, one of my cohorts confronted me about my response to a family who had just lost their father in a motor vehicle accident. And she had noticed, rightly, that when at the end of that long shift this trauma came in, I didn't do a single thing. I stood there like a deer in headlights, not because it was my first major trauma or because it was anything that much different than any of the other experiences I had, but just for whatever reason, I was paralyzed. I could not go to that family. And I remember the feeling at the time. I wanted to care, but at that moment I didn't know how. I didn't have a clue of the first thing I would say or do. I was full of both fear and uncertainty. And I remember my friend's advice. She told me, Chris, are you dumb enough to think that anybody knows what they're doing? Which I appreciated, and she said next, everyone is unsure and everyone is scared. Next time, could I give you a little push? And I said, sure, that sounds good. She said, sometimes we just need a running jump to get over the initial resistance. After the tires get unstuck from the pavement, sometimes the rolling is easier. I'm pretty grateful for that advice. Being unsure and unable to act is not just a mental state or an intellectual response that we get stuck in our brainwaves or that something kind of glitches in our mind and our heart. It's also a physical state. Am I willing to let myself be paralyzed into inaction is basically what my friend was saying. Or do you want to use the resources that are around you? I can nudge you, elbow you, push you, show you. Am I willing to give permission to be nudged, to be given that push into action? It seems whenever we're confronted with a call upon ourselves to express compassion or intervene with kindness or money or time or energy, we have to ask ourselves, how are we most tempted to respond in those situations? This is one of those knowing ourselves kind of questions. I have to know that my first reaction is, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I have to know that that usually first paralyzes me, sticks me to the ground, and ties my tongue in a knot. I have to know that about myself. We all have different first reactions when we're called upon or when something happens that is critical or emergent in our lives. I have to know how I'm tempted to respond, and then I have to ask, how is that different from how I wish I could respond? What do I have to do to overcome that initial resistance? Maybe because of these experiences I've had, or maybe they're not all that unique. I mean, probably not. But I've long been intrigued by the bystander effect. This is a psychological theory that says how our relationship to those around us impacts our ability to act. I want to show you a short clip that kind of introduces this and gives a few striking examples. Here's a little. There's a lot of things to unpack there. At various times, we've all thought these thoughts. It's easy when you see 10, 20 minutes go by and no one helps to think, that would never happen if I was walking by. But the interesting thing about psychological studies is that they often do reflect what we might ourselves do. It's hard for us to take ourselves out of that situation. At various times, we've all thought, oh, it's none of my business, or that we feel powerless to stop the bully or the person speaking or doing some action. We've all thought that we don't want to draw our attention to ourselves. We've all feared retribution or what might happen to us. We all have said, I don't know what to do. And as the video explains, we've all had two scripts going on in ourselves at the same time. One being that we should help, and the other being we should do what everyone else is doing. There must be something I don't know. Aside from all of the social things we could talk about, the kind of person that is the person on the sidewalk needing help, and how that affects our willingness to help, that's probably the topic of another day. But the idea that we all are confronted with this idea, should I or shouldn't I? Should I act or should I wait until someone else does? I had a teacher once who said that we should count all the times that we say to ourselves, you know, someone should ... because it usually means our brain is somehow telling us, oh, I should probably ... Okay, it's time to talk about Harry Potter, which for me could be every day. That would be all right with me. You know the Harry Potter series. If you don't, you should. 7 books, 8 movies, the most influential children and young adult literature of a generation. So that's the plug to know what we're talking about. Do you remember the Dursleys? The Dursleys. And they're some of the first characters introduced in J.K. Rowling's first book. And I'm quoting from that first book. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. Oh, good old normal. It's an idea that clings to us with bewildering tenacity. The implication is that there's this baseline human standard of everythingness that represents how we should live, how we should behave, how we should respond, yet half a second of considering what life on earth truly is like shows that, of course, that can't be true. And yet, we still worry ourselves about normal. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley were pointedly proud to be normal, proud not to be noticed, proud not to be special in any kind of standout way that would draw attention to them and get the neighbors whispering. Most of us know from lived experience that spending time trying to act normal is a special kind of hell that we create. Because normal is a fantasy far more out there than a secret school of wizards. The wisdom is that nobody's normal, and trying to be that impossible sort will guarantee that we will likely not do anything that our conscience or decency will ask of us. Trying to be normal is a first step toward paralysis and inaction. In Helium Thoughts by Alice Major, she recognizes that the largest obstacle to living our spiritual values is ourselves, is our very brainwaves. We are both our biggest obstacle and our biggest asset. Those thought patterns that are bound in our myelin, that are bound in the synapses that we've trained for years and years to fire, those synaptic links that were set as youngsters, and now even if we want to change them, it becomes very difficult to do so. As she puts it, spiral arms that wrap us tightly in the past, our own past and in our bonds of evolution. Our thoughts spin in preset combinations and conclusions. If we stop there to be hostages of everything we've done in the past, to be hostages of the way we've thought in the past, the way we've acted in the past, then we're destined for a lot more watery, inactive responses, aren't we? Because we'll just say, well, we've never done that before, so we can't possibly do it now. But we don't have to leave it there. If those experiments, like some of the ones we saw a minute ago, reveal something alarming about our instinctual nature to do what everyone else is doing, they also reveal something encouraging. And that is that it only takes one to change a group mindset. That it only takes one person to help until others will say, oh, it's okay to help. To find a new group to be a part of, it sometimes just takes one person to show the way. Not saying that's easy to be that person. I'm just saying it's possible for any of us. If these examples teach us anything, it's that despite our actions and our thoughts being bound by those early connections, we're all yet young. We can think anything, says the poet. And if so, then the spiritual endeavor is about choosing. That is the discipline of our spiritual walk. To say we can think anything. We might be bound by what we've done and thought in the past, but we can think anything, and we can choose to act in ways that may not be natural, that may not be part of our past, that may not be our first instinct. But in choosing, we are setting a path towards a better us, a better decision, a better way. As the wisdom from the Jesus tradition that we read earlier says, all the right words and all the right thinking won't do anything, really. What good does that do? Merely talking about what we wish could happen. And in fact, isn't that one of the biggest traps of religion and spirituality? Is that we all sit in our cloistered walls and talk about things. It's one of the biggest criticisms of organized religion, is that it's a whole lot of talk, and the action may or may not match. And that kind of thinking, that kind of rolling around the merry-go-round of faith talk doesn't do the person collapsed on the steps or the grieving family any good at all. All of that talk has to be backed by our willingness to do something about it, whether in our own lives or in response to each other. Says the wisdom writer, talk and action, they go together. And I believe there's always hope on this spiritual walk we're walking with one another. As Nelson Mandela said, I never lose, I either win or I learn. This is the spirit in which we move, even with difficulty, from apathy to engagement, from that place of being paralyzed and saying, I don't know what to do, to a place where we can do something, anything, even with difficulty. To learn about ourselves in such a way that we can overcome that initial resistance, the initial friction that keeps us from the responses that we want to have. And I think that's how the world moves forward. At least Weezer the dog would suggest that we do that one small action at a time by seeing others who have done those actions. We can be inspired. So for me, what this means is that when I'm paralyzed, when I'm not sure what to do, when I'm tempted to do nothing because everybody's doing nothing, I'm inspired to find a new group to be a part of. To look for the person or to be the person. To create a do-something group. If we need it, let's ask for a push. If we need to find strength in our words and values, they're not meaningless. They're there to strengthen us. They're there that we can remember them and return to them, our beliefs and our words. Not so that we can sit on the sidelines and feel good about what we believe, but so that we can take those words and beliefs, strengthen them, so that we can take a step. Any step, just a step. To quote my friend again, nobody really knows what they're doing. Everybody's scared. So, take a running jump. Get a push. Let's just start. And we'll be rolling in no time, if we have each other. So may we work to make it so, in so many ways. The light that shines is also the light that goes with us. It may not be the same for each of us because we're all in a different place. But we take this light and we shine it wherever it's needed. But we recognize too that it changes. This light goes, but it goes in different forms. And so may we take this light that permeates all. May we go with the light that we share. And may we go knowing that even though it's changed, it is not gone. It goes with us in whatever ways we need to act, to change, to live. May we go in that spirit, asking just one question.